Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is doing everything in his power to make sure Poland adopts the SAFE program. The SAFE program is a loan for EU member states to invest in defense, under which Poland is set to borrow over 40 billion euros. The European Union would have the authority to decide what the money can be spent on, and on top of that, the EU would be able to freeze the borrowed money at will, under the pretext of Poland going against so-called European values. With this in mind, it becomes obvious that the point of Poland's SAFE loan is not the development of the Polish military, but rather bringing Poland to heel politically. What this means is, we may encounter a scenario where component deliveries are halted by Europe because, in a few years, Poland elects the wrong government. Another likely scenario is one where, moments after the SAFE program is adopted, European officials will say Polish President Karol Nawrocki must sign whatever bills Tusk's government puts on his desk, because vetoing them undermines so-called rule of law. The SAFE loan looks like pocket money for Poland, which can be taken away at any time. President Nawrocki has not yet decided what to do with the bill, which is likely to be passed by the parliament on Friday. If the president vetoes the bill, the government will not legally be able to take out the loan. Members of Tusk's coalition are already floating the idea of launching the program even if the president vetoes the bill, though that would be contrary to the Polish constitution and could even end in legal action against the politicians. Any agreement must be ratified by the president if it places a significant financial burden on the state. Donald Tusk should ask for the ratification of the agreement. He does not have the two-thirds majority in the parliament necessary to override the presidential veto, so he can't legally sign the loan agreement. Should the loan agreement go through, the EU would, under the pretext of national security, have gained the leverage to demand Poland do things like introduce the euro, take in third world migrants, or defer legal powers to the EU. The bill on the adoption of SAFE will return from the Senate to the Parliament in the upcoming week. The president will then have 21 days to decide whether to sign or veto it. Tusk and his company are already trying to put maximum media pressure on President Nawrocki to sign the bill.
Niech nikomu w Polsce nie przyjdzie ta myśl do głowy, żeby zablokować program SAFE.
Beyond the unparalleled leverage the SAFE loan would give the EU, the loan would also limit Poland's ability to buy equipment from the strongest army in the world, the United States. The Law and Justice Party, the main opposition to Tusk's coalition and the largest single party in Poland's parliament, has their own vision of pursuing Polish national security. If the nation entrusts us with power, we will immediately begin negotiations with the USA about taking part in the nuclear sharing program. Nuclear weapons. This is a vision those in power completely ignore, since it would require prioritizing real, high-quality diplomacy with the USA. Instead, they put all their eggs in the basket of the EU's SAFE program.
My naprawdę szukamy wszystkich dróg, żeby ten program jak najszybciej zacząć realizować.
The possible motivations are many, but Germany in particular is especially keen on Poland adopting the SAFE program, going so far as to send its own ambassador to spectate the parliament's session on the loan. Germany needs contracts, money, and supporters to ever hope of becoming a regional power. By adopting the SAFE program, much of Poland's borrowed money would go towards supporting the German defense industry, and thus, German regional dominance. The geopolitical ramifications of such a shift of power toward Germany could be disastrous for Eastern and Central Europe, considering the German establishment's fondness of economic integration with Russia. German geopolitical doctrine spent years feeding Moscow with money through gas purchases, which the Kremlin used to fund the military it later used to invade Ukraine. Should the German vision of regional leadership come to fruition, business-as-usual style economic relations between Europe and Moscow would become the political consensus. This, in turn, would enable Russia to start a war in Europe, bigger and bloodier than Ukraine, some years in the future. Despite ongoing peace talks, Russia has launched another massive attack on Ukraine. 2 days before the 4th anniversary of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, Pope Leo XIV renewed his appeal on Sunday for an immediate cessation of fighting and bombing, and for the strengthening of dialogue for peace. Last night, Russia fired 50 ballistic and cruise missiles and 297 drones at Ukraine. Kyiv and the region around the capital, the Black Sea port of Odessa, and several cities in central Ukraine were hit in the nighttime attacks. Air defense units managed to shoot down or neutralize 33 missiles and 274 drones. Firefighters had to pull me out because I was buried under the ceiling. They had to clear everything away first. I couldn't see anything. I lost consciousness. I don't even remember if I heard it or not. At At least one person was killed and 5 were injured in the Kyiv region. Serious damage was reported in 5 districts, where several buildings were damaged. I ran outside and saw that the house was on fire. At first, I didn't know if it was a missile, a shahed, or something else. You know how it is in the middle of the night. Only now can I see how extensive the damage is. Several explosions occurred in the center of Lviv. As a result, a policewoman was killed and 25 people were injured. The authorities detained the alleged perpetrator, a woman who planted the explosives. The mayor of Lviv, Andriy Sadovyi, reported an act of terrorism. This is definitely an act of terrorism. 15 people are currently receiving medical assistance. Some of them are in critical condition. One policewoman was killed, and I offer my condolences to her family. An investigation is underway, and once it is complete, we will clean everything up. We will help the people. It was a very difficult night. On the eve of the 4th anniversary of the invasion, a rally in solidarity with the Ukrainian people was held in Washington near the Lincoln Memorial. The U.S. authorities were urged not to stop helping Ukraine in its defense.
4 years later, we are still asking the same. We're asking for this administration to support Ukraine with weapons, to support Ukraine economically, and give Ukraine enough not to just survive, but to win this war. And Ukraine can do it.
He underestimated the Ukrainian spirit, the spirit of a nation that is so courageous and whose dignity cannot be conquered neither by Putin or someone else.
And in the Vatican, addressing thousands of people who came in for the midday Angelus prayer, the Pope said he sympathizes with all those affected by this senseless war. 4 years have passed since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. My heart is torn by the dramatic situation that is unfolding before everyone's eyes. How many victims, how many human lives, how many torn families, how much destruction, how much unspeakable suffering. Every war is a real wound inflicted on the entire human family. Peace cannot be postponed. It is an urgent need and must find a place in our hearts and translate into responsible decisions, said Pope Leo XIV. Therefore, I strongly reiterate my appeal. Let the weapons fall silent, let the bombing cease, let a ceasefire be reached without delay, and let dialogue be strengthened to open the way to peace. During a meeting with the faithful in the Vatican, the Pope emphasized the dramatic consequences of every war, but he especially called for prayers for the Ukrainian people. I encourage everyone to pray for the martyrs of the Ukrainian people and for all those suffering from this war and every conflict in the world, so that the long-awaited gift of peace may shine forth in our time. Russia launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. And as a result of the Kremlin's military actions, it has occupied about 20% of Ukraine's territory. In the trilateral peace talks involving the U.S., which are taking place in Geneva, there has been some rapprochement on military issues, but no progress has been made on territorial issues. According to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, another round of negotiations may take place within 3 weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
A march took place in the center of one of France's largest cities, Lyon, commemorating the killing in broad daylight of right-wing activist, 23-year-old Quentin Deronk, by left-wing militants, simply because he stood up for a group of young women protesters who were being attacked. Such violence against women and against the man who defended them shocked me. It's unimaginable what happened and that he's dead. It moved me. It was a lynching. The 23-year-old victim was beaten and kicked in the street. He died in the hospital from severe head injuries. 7 people have been charged with the murder.
Une minute de silence.
The National Assembly honored the memory of the slain right-wing activist with a minute of silence, and a political storm is sweeping across France. It would be a mistake to treat this tragedy as mere news. It is the result of a climate of violence meticulously cultivated over the years by a section of the left, whose verbal excesses and strategy of permanent chaos are now fueling physical violence on our streets. 2 of the people arrested for the murder of the boy are directly linked to Jean-Luc Mélenchon's left-wing party, La France Insoumise, which is represented in the French parliament. But the leader of the largest left-wing group in France, which recently came close to taking power, sounds less and less credible and more extreme. The murder case has shown that behind the smiles of left-wing activists lies the brutal force of masked left-wing militias.
J'appelle moi tout le monde au calme.
I call on everyone to remain calm. I think this is a moment for reflection and respect for our young compatriot who died, for his family and loved ones. And that should be the priority. The moment for firmness and responsibility will come later. Yesterday's march in Lyon, commemorating the murdered Quentin, gathered over 3,000 people. Hundreds of police officers, prepared for the worst, ensured the safety of the participants. I see people of all ages here. They came just to pay tribute to the deceased. At the same time, I find it unbelievable, even absurd, that today we need 500 police officers here to protect people who came to pay tribute to the victim. The case also has an international dimension. In connection with the murder, the U.S. Embassy in France warned of the growing brutality of the radical left in France. Today, U.S. Ambassador Charles Kushner was highly criticized for this by the French government and summoned to the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs.